Hi, I'm Phil Bainbridge, and this is a quick tutorial video for the blog post to organize files into a JavaScript object. So what I have here is I have a folder, and in it I have a number of CSV files with just some dummy data in. Imagine that I would have a few more CSV files in here than this, and I have a module code, a tutor name, and then a group number that they belong to. What I'm aiming to do is loop through all of the files within the folder and collate all of the file IDs for each tutor into an object that I can then later iterate through. So I want to collect all of the file IDs that belong to Jane Doe, and then I want to collect all the file IDs that belong to Micky Mouse. And the ultimate aim of this at a later date was to be able to then go through and extract the data for each tutor into a specific Google Sheet file. Okay, so I've got the app script file here. It's got lots and lots of comments in to help explain what's going on. Ultimately, what we're looking at is the collated data is going to look at something like this. So we have our object and we have our tutor, and the tutor then has a number of file IDs associated with that value. Okay, so we do the usual loop through each file in a folder. We get the file, we get the name. Ultimately, what we wanted to do this is just loop through in one go and get all of this information. We're using the JavaScript method ends with for CSV file. The reason being there is I can rely on the CSV file extension at the end, and it's not going to try and pick up this app script file that's in there as well. So I split up the file name based on the fact that I have a space hyphen space to be able to get it into 3 chunks. Just for demo purposes, I've shown splitting out the 3 chunks there, but the one we're primarily focused on at this point is the tutor's name that is going to come from that bit of the file name there. So we want to take a look at the object and see if a key already exists for the tutor. So if it does not, so the object has not seen that this tutor exists, so first iteration, Jane Doe is not there, for instance, then we want to create that item as an array with the first file ID. So we're going to pop that in to our JavaScript object with the first file ID there. If, as we keep looping through, however, once we've done this once, the object will know about this tutor. So in that instance, we can get the relevant tutor, either Jane Doe or Micky Mouse, depending on where we are when we're looping through, and push in the file ID into that existing array. So as I say, we're going to get something that starts to build up the file IDs here that all belong to the individual tutor. So once we've done that, we can then look at how are we going to extract that information and what we're going to do with it. And I've done this in 2 parts because there's always more than one way of doing the same thing. And I've got some links to some useful information about what type of loops are going on. But one of the first things we want to look at doing is we want to be able to turn the JavaScript object into an array so that we can then iterate through it and extract the relevant information that we want to use. Okay, so we're using that variable there and we're pulling it down into here. So at this point, we've got 2 loops going on here. And as I say, what I was aiming to do was I wanted to create a Google Sheet file per tutor to then get the contents of the CSV files and paste them into specific tabs. So in the first for of loop, I would be able to create my Google Sheet file here for that given tutor. Then I can look to loop through all of the file IDs that that tutor has. So there's a little bit of a logger here so we can see what turns up. And again, in here, I've just put some blurb about some extra stuff I could do. I could open the file, read the data, copy it into the Google Sheet, etc., as we loop through each of the items there. So that's the first method. The second method is just we're still using the for of process here. But what we're actually then going to be doing is we're pulling out the objects as an array of all the file IDs for that given tutor. And then we're just using a very simple for loop to go through. So at this point here, we've got the tutor, we've got Jane Doe or Micky Mouse. So it's where we can create the Google Sheet file. Then when we jump into this loop, it's where we can go through the individual file IDs of the CSV files. So we're principally doing the same thing. There's just a couple of different JavaScript methods going on there to show you how to do those different, to show you how to do it in different ways and see which ones are your preference. So what does that look like when we run it? Well, if I click through the authorization pop-ups, and accept that. Okay, so if I scroll right up to the top, the first thing is an example of what the JavaScript object looks like, as we mentioned. And then we can see some logging going on. So we can see the tutor, their file ID, the tutor, the file ID. So Micky Mouse only had 2. And then we go down to Jane Doe and see their file IDs. So that's the first bit of logging that's happening in the first example of how to get the data out. Then in the second example here, we've been a little bit more specific in what we've got, and we've looped through and just said, here's a single file ID once we've seen what Micky Mouse looks like. And then we go on to Jane and we extract the single file IDs there as well. So it's just evidence that it's working and you can see what we're getting as an output. Thank you very much.